We are with the Book of Love, Canto 3, Satyavan and Savitri. Satyavan, the human soul turning towards the Divine Mother, Savitri. This is the most fulfilling experience of love. It is the original power, and it carries within it the absoluteness, the absolute capacity for transformation. Mother has referred to it in the agenda, referring to the Gita, and she calls it the secret, the great secret. She says in the Gita it is mentioned as the great secret, and several places she speaks about it, that it is the great secret of change, great secret of transformation. So much so that when she was asked how to cure evil in this world, she again speaks of this power, that it is love that alone can be the victor, which can triumph. Of course, she is not speaking of what we normally call as love, but love in its original power. It is the power that has plunged into darkness, into creation, headlong, to rescue it out of the inconscient and inertia. That is why one of the lines we read earlier in Canto 2 of this same book, a mystery wakes in our inconscient stuff. It fills with joy, fills with beauty. All other forms of change, because of any compulsion, pressure, punishment, etc., they do not last. They are born out of fear. And they are very temporary. They are not something which will endure. It's well exemplified in many, many instances. But a change that comes out of freedom and out of the power of love is a change that endures. Of course, love has a healing power even at the physical level, and this is being more and more demonstrated. This is a lovely book, Love, Medicine and Miracles, written by Dr. Bernie Siegel, where he says how the power of love can heal even physical diseases. So someone asked, what if it doesn't work? So the answer was, increase the dose. I would perhaps say, change the potency, like in homeopathy. It's so true. It alone has just the very touch of love, brings this change. As Sri Aurobindo elsewhere says, a mighty transfiguration works. Because love, beauty and joy are a triumvirate of one single truth. Love is the core, and beauty and joy are its natural expressions. They are like the two limbs of love. So Satyavan is also undergoing that change. He is beginning to feel that stir and change. But before that, how he approaches the Divine Mother, with what aspiration in his heart. This, in a sense, gives us the key to Sri Aurobindo's yoga. There are so many reasons why we approach the Divine Mother. So when Sri Aurobindo was asked what is the secret of this yoga, he said there are two secrets. One is to remain psychically open to the Divine Mother. He stopped there. So the question was, what is the second secret? So Sri Aurobindo says, aspiration for the divine life. Because we may open to her for various reasons. Mother, I want protection. Mother, I want my children's education. Mother, I want that I should be cured of this disease, that disease. All kinds of reasons. And the Divine Mother answers to everyone according to one's need. It's not that she denies something to one. No. To each one who opens with whatsoever faith, the Divine Mother responds like that. But the highest aspiration, Satyavan embodies that highest aspiration. He says, I want to find the bridge between the body and the soul, between spirit and matter. I am looking for that. And these were powerful lines. Page 408. My other selves I lost and the body of God. So this is the problem of self-realization of the traditional kind. That we find the self, but the sense of this world, what do others, so-called others, mean with regard to our own individual existence? That is why when Sri Aurobindo was asked, why you have named this journal Arya, what does it mean? So Sri Aurobindo gives a very beautiful reply. It is there in his collected works. And toward the end, he says, even though the true Aryan discovers his transcendent self, yet he still does not discard his human personality. He uses it as a center for the expression. He does not throw it away that, oh, now it has served the purpose, it has become meaningless. He uses it as a center of expression for the play. This is what people find so difficult to understand, that how was Shri Krishna really a realized yogin? And some people go to an absurd levels. I met someone few days back, he said, he was a nice man. I said, the Gita is regarded as Brahma Vidya, and he is referred to as Yogeshwar. Leave aside the avatar part. Because it's difficult for them to understand how Shri Krishna was relating with this whole world in different ways. To each one he was responding in a certain way. He was not saying that, oh, all are same, all are equal. No, the divine enters into the play, and there would be some who will be close, some far, some will be in a certain role, some in some other roles. But all these roles are decided by something much deeper and truer, not the way we pick and choose that people whom we take egoistically personal interest in, they would be closer. People who satisfy our ego, we like to form a circle around us, which is the typical human way. And people who are critical, we keep them far away. But that's not how the divine chooses. So my other selves I lost, and the body of God. The body of God is this world, this universe. The link of the finite with the infinite. The bridge between the appearance and the truth. So this, of course, we know. It's very well known saying in traditional spirituality, all this is an appearance. Yes, this is appearance, that is truth. But there has to be something which connects the two. So he is looking for that. The mystic aim for which the world was made. The human sense of immortality. How beautiful it is. Deep within there is a consciousness of immortality. But what has that got to do with our humanness? How can we immortalize even our human actions, even our human thoughts, feelings, impulses? Is there a way that they too can be uplifted by the touch of the immortal and the eternal? And then these masterly two lines which we read. But now the goldling comes to me with thy feet, and his gold sun has shone on me from thy face. If only this is how every man to start with in India, or to start within the devotees, could treat and greet the women. Because in the ancient tradition, at least in India, every woman who was born in house and who came to a house was regarded as Lakshmi. You see, this sense is there. How Sri Aurobindo says, your feet have come and they will change. And people really believed it, that a woman can change the house. She can change everything. Why? Because she was seen as an embodiment of goddess Lakshmi. So when she was born, oh, Lakshmi has come. It was like fortune has come. Fate has come. Now our problems will be thrown far away. Now it is, the effect of Kali is so strong that it is just the opposite. Oh my God, why such a big problem? Not realizing, and so it's wonderful that once again the nation is beginning to look up to woman as that power of the divine who comes to change by the power of love. That is the difference between father and mother. Fathers will give a system, discipline, this way, that way. But mothers, simply by that love they change. It's amazing, even at a human level, how it operates. So Satyavan belongs to that original type, not the distorted and perverted type. So as he sees Savitri, he says, I see your feet coming, and your feet will come and change my life. For now, and now that already the first touch of transformation that he feels, for now another realm draws near with thee, and now diviner voices fill my ear. The presence of love in a human heart, and the more it is transfigured, the more it is purified and refined, is such an energy that it draws around oneself an atmosphere full of positive things and beautiful things. It uplifts just by the very presence. And Savitri is none else but the Divine Mother embodying that love. So, because of this love in her heart, all around her is a wonderful atmosphere. Just entering into that atmosphere, one feels uplifted. A strange new world swims to me in thy gaze, approaching like a star from unknown heavens. A cry of spheres comes with thee, and a song of flaming gods. I draw a wealthier breath, and in a fierier march of moments move. This is darshan. So very often, how did somebody feel? There are also, we try to recapture, and everybody describes darshan. So what happens when people have darshan of the divine? And each one is described in his own way. Now Satyavan is having a darshan. He is not just seeing and meeting somebody. And what is the first effect of that darshan? When we have the darshan of the Lord, suddenly it is as if a new world has opened before us, a new possibility. The whole being is uplifted. Already the process of transformation starts. It's not what he or she speaks. It is not necessary at all. That one moment is packed with eternity. And now diviner voices fill my ear. Already he is beginning to hear the voices which uplift, voices that speak about the coming dawn, the voices that draw one towards the future, the voices that fill the heart with a renewed hope. All this Satyavan is beginning to experience. A strange new world swims to me in thy gaze, approaching like a star from unknown heavens. A cry of spheres comes with thee, and a song of flaming gods. How beautiful this is. By the mere fact that she looks upon us, all the gods automatically come. But yes, we must make that surrender in that spirit that yes, I belong to you. So this is that story, the famous story that there was a king and to some of his ministers, different things he is giving. To somebody he says, okay, because they have saved his life four young people have saved his life when he was traveling incognito. So he says that, okay, whatever you ask, you tell me. So somebody asks for a job, another person for so much money, and a third person for security for the children. So fourth person is very intelligent. He says, no, king, I don't want all this. I just love you. I want to be an intimate friend with you. Just give me your friendship, that is enough. You don't want a job? No. But you have a very poor job, doesn't matter. You don't want money? No. But I believe you have very poor bank balance, doesn't matter. Security for your children? No, king, I just want to be friends with you. If you can give me, otherwise no problem. So naturally king is committed. He has asked for something very strange. He says, okay, I am your friend. Now the moment he becomes a friend, so he says, so when are you coming to my place for dinner? Now friend can't say no. He says, okay, fix a date. So king fixes a date for dinner. So now king has to come. So all the ministers are preparing the road to his house. So the roads get prepared. Next is that king can't sit in a hut on a low stool and eat. So they say, my God, king is coming. They prepare a good house for him. So he says, why are you doing it? No, king is coming. We are not worried about you. We are thinking of the king. He will question us. So house is also prepared. So who will make good food for him? So he says, the man who has become the friend of king, he says, well, we must ask someone because now he is going to come very often to my house. So I have to, somebody who really knows everything that the king likes, does not like, all the tastes. So the king says, well, for that I have something else in my mind. Anyways, now you have the house, the road, and they also give him a good position because king has to sit with an equal stature. So finally they say, okay, my daughter is the only one who knows all about me. Let her get married to you and I'll come to your place regularly for dinner. Now this is how, when we go to the divine, we ask for all kinds of things. But if we ask for his friendship, this is the story of Krishna and Arjuna. This is the darshan. When Arjuna sees Krishna, he doesn't know who he is, but something in his heart recognizes. It's a kind of recognition. And so he chooses Krishna, you be by my side. Mind you, I won't lift up arms. No problem. I won't even play my flute, which makes people unconscious, and then you can. No, sir. You decide I'll be no good. Even my army is going to be with Kauravas. Doesn't matter. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, even if the world is on one side and Krishna alone and unarmed, choose Krishna. Because then everything else is taken care of. When he chooses Krishna, he gets Krishna and he gets the world. But they who choose the world lose Krishna and lose the world. This is the secret. Satyavan has read this Mahabharata and he knows very beautifully what is to be done. So he makes that choice. You come. I welcome you. My mind transfigures to a rapturous seer. This is the touch of the divine. People do all kinds of tapasya. Particularly asuras are very fond of strict tapasyas, torturing themselves, tormenting themselves to get power, knowledge, this, that. But there is another way, the way of the bhakta. What does the divine do with the bhakta? What do you want? I want nothing, I just want you to be near me. All right, I transfigure your mind into the mind of a seer. Nothing else. Sri Aurobindo says in one of his letters, if love is there, nothing else is needed. Everything gets done for the sadhak. The inner veils removed, the nature purified, the transformation, everything. Provided, of course, this is a true surrender and true love, not a show of love, not a sham of love. So already Satyavan experiences, my mind transfigures to a rapturous seer. A foam leap traveling from the waves of bliss has changed my heart and changed the earth around. How beautiful this line is. We want world to change. But if we change ourselves, probably we will no more look at the world with the same eyes. That's why one of the signs that somebody is in love, even at a human level, is that the person is suddenly very happy. And parents know this. So when they see their child is unusually happy, they want to know, whom are you seeing? Whom are you meeting? Suddenly everything becomes wonderful. The food is good. Mama, you are so lovely. Dad, you are so good. The child who was all the time revolting, reacting, angry, suddenly what's happened to him? The world appears different. It becomes beautiful. Not because of the person, because the presence of love in the human heart changes one from inside. We think it is the person. It's not the person. It is the energy. So here he says, has changed my heart and changed the earth around, all with thy coming fills. Everywhere I see you. Wherever I go, I think of you, I see you. This is how love operates. Air, soil and stream wear bridal raiment to be fit for thee. To what extent this love can go? Both at human level, at the divine level. The same energy can be uplifted to what levels? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stood in front of the sea and suddenly the sea vanished. And looking at the sea, he felt, my Krishna, this is the color of my Krishna, and jumped into the blue deeps. Because he was filled with that ecstasy. That is how love begins to show in every face. Sri Aurobindo writes in one of his 4 poems, in every face I see thy single face. That brings the change. That is love. Wherein everything, everyone, everywhere, one begins to see that. How beautifully Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, when he was bit by a cobra, suddenly he brushed his aside and said, what, mother? Again, you are teasing me? My God, cobra has bit. What, mother? Again, you are teasing me? No effect. Because one begins to live in that state of oneness. And by whatever means it comes, it has a power. Because it is an energy which changes and begins to show. Through whatever form, whatever face. All with thy coming fills, air, soil and stream wear bridal raiment to be fit for thee. because he is a poor fellow, he doesn't have money. So how he will arrange for a bridal dress? He says, but look, this is the dress I can make you wear. And sunlight grows a shadow of thy you because of change within me by thy look. He says, I don't know what you have done. Your look has changed me from inside. And now sunlight also appears like a shadow. Because there is nothing more luminous than thy face, than thy beauty. Why? Because it is colored by the energy of love. So though we often say it's a coloring. Yes, it's a coloring. But this coloring removes many a dark coats which normally and ordinarily color human beings. So that is the power of love which Satyavan is experiencing. Come nearer to me from thy car of light on the green sward, disdaining not our soil. So then he invites her, and then, as we said, the final act of surrender, it is both levels it is working. At the human level, the love of Satyavan and Savitri. At a deeper level, the play of the Lord and his eternal spouse, nature and soul. We will see this as we proceed. And of course, the soul calling the divine to come and fill the abysses, and how he has waited for her. So here is these beautiful lines. On this green sward disdaining not our soil, for here are secret spaces made for thee. We also have secret spaces. Many parts, unconscious parts. But what we have done, we have filled it. And Sri Aurobindo's poem Ahana, in fact in that Ahana says, we have filled it with flowers that are scentless. So everybody, there is a whole crowd occupying. Somebody is occupying physical mind, somebody is occupying our imaginative mind, somebody is occupying our rational mind, somebody is occupying our surface heart, deeper heart, impulse. We have filled these spaces. But if these spaces could wait for the divine becoming empty, then calling her and asking her to take place in the home would be so wonderful. But we have no place for the divine in our hearts and our homes. We make a little, cupboard. Imagine telling mother, Mother, come, I have prepared a cupboard ready for thee. Will she come? She will say, it is enough for my picture. Okay, mother, I have made a special room for thee, a puja room. So once in a while she will like to peep out of the puja room and say, let me do what you are doing elsewhere. And then it will be different. But imagine waiting with the whole house ready, empty. This is for you. Come, mother. Everything belongs to you. So Satyavan is prepared like that. For here are secret spaces made for thee, whose caves of emerald long to screen thy form. Wilt thou not make this mortal bliss thy sphere? Come taste this food, this mortal joy. You are divine, you are eternal. You know what is everlasting bliss. But I can give you mortal joy. Would you like to taste it? And when we do it with love in our heart, with a spirit of surrender, the divine would sit and taste that mortal food. And that food will grow divine. That is the secret of prasad. It's a mortal food. It is not food for the gods. But because the divine touches it and partakes of it, it gets transformed. So Satyavan is very smart. He is calling her to taste mortal bliss. But what he is ensuring for himself? Immortal bliss. Because the moment the two meet, his own joys will change into eternal joy. Descend, O happiness, with thy moon gold feet, enrich earth's floors, upon whose sleep we lie. Earth's floors, and the sleep is the inertia, the inconscience, the dull gravitation. We are lying on that. We do not have the strength to uplift ourselves. But you can come and be here with us, and that is enough for us. He says, enrich earth's floors upon whose sleep we lie. O my bright beauty's princess Savitri, by my delight and thy own joy compelled, enter my life, thy chamber and thy shrine. Again, it gives us another secret of bhakti. The divine takes delight in the bhakta even as the bhakta takes delight in the divine. And there must be joy. Without joy, there is no bhakti. Bhakti is not okay, what I will get, what I will. Bhakta seeks only one thing, nearness to the Lord. And that gives him joy. And he seeks that with joy in his heart. If you could come, that is the joy I seek. So when he calls with that bliss, that joy, the divine also gives himself freely. So that is why, look at this wonderful line, by my delight and thy own joy compelled. What is the biggest compulsion that draws the divine? A glad submission. Several places, even in the Gita, it is so beautifully said, yoga is not done by a despondent heart. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. One must be glad in the heart to do yoga. Yoga is not a drudgery that, oh my God, some people become very serious. Why? Because I am doing sadhana. It's just the opposite. the more sadhana one does, one discovers that one is not doing sadhana, divine is doing sadhana. The other sign is, one is filled with joy. Because one comes in contact with the all blissful. The sign of sadhana is not to say that I am a sadhak. 2 days back, some gentleman came and asked me, I want to meet some sadhaks. I said, everybody is a sadhak, go anywhere. But unfortunately, they are all too busy and they don't like to sit and meet. I said, no, but how to know? Because, here no dress and all thing. So how to sign? So I gave him a sign. I say, very simple. You walk around. Wherever you see joy on the face, you catch hold of him. I don't know whether he tried it or not. He didn't come back to me. But I told him, wherever you see joy on the face, that person is a sadhak. Don't ask anything else. If you ask more questions, you will be confused. You sit and talk to him about mother and you will get things. Of course, I didn't say so many things. But essentially, that is the sign. By joy, the divine comes to us. When there is joy in the love and the giving. Not that, I have to give myself to the divine, oh my God. First, I have to give. Why this condition? He should give me things. I should have a proof that he is the divine. After that, I will think whether he is worth giving or not. But when a person says, I don't know what you can give me nothing. But I want you, I love you. And take joy in that. Then that joy compels the divine to come. Because there is joy in the heart. So here is, by my own bliss, by my bliss and thy own joy compelled. Look at the burden in the line, stress, compelled. The divine is compelled. It's no more tapasya sadhana, but he is compelled. Enter my life, thy chamber and thy shrine. In the great quietness where spirits meet. Led by my hushed desire into my woods, let the dim rustling arches over thee lean, one with the breath of things eternal live. Thy heart beats near to mine, till there shall leap, enchanted from the fragrance of the flowers, a moment which all murmurs shall recall. It is a recapturing of that mood of beauty and joy, the nearness of love gives. Love is not satisfied with being loved from afar. By its very nature, it seeks closeness. It draws the object of love. Everything gets caught, even desire, the body, everything. And everything around belongs to the beloved and the lovers. So he is calling her to fill everything, that it's not just for me. My heart, my life, everything around, the tree, arches, they will all become your house, your cover. And then the last line is an amazing line, which has deep, profound occult truths revealed in a very casual line. Sometimes Sri Aurobindo's lines are like that, so revealing. And every bird remember in its cry. It's a very simple line, direct line. But look at this, what Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us. That this beauty of love, this one moment which will be eternal, let it be such a moment that it goes deep as an imprint into creation. So deep that every time from this moment on, when a bird would call, this new note will be added into it. There is a very nice, again, ahana, where Sri Aurobindo says that Yamuna still remembers, and there was, as children we used to be told this bhajan, that as, Yamuna still remembers the dance of Krishna upon its waves. And that is why she is always restless. She is a very restless river. Unlike the Ganges, which can suddenly assume the form of the mighty Shiva destroying all things, or a very, very quiet stream, Yamuna is forever chanchal, restless. Why? Because she has experienced the feet of Krishna dance over her. A blessed river. Hardly anybody speaks about Yamuna. But that is the beauty of Yam. That's why she has the status of Ganges, equal status. Ganges have come from heaven, she is purifying. But Yamuna, which has been touched by the Lord's feet even as a child. So forever she is seeking, because forever she remembers. Now that imprint has gone into her. Just as we talk about material relics, things touched by the divine, and they are exceptional. What about the whole atmosphere in which they have breathed? Sometimes I fancy, and I am sure this is right, it's not an imagination, that the air when one breathes in Pondicherry contains molecules and atoms of the mother's breath. This air cannot forget her. Human beings can forget. These walls she has touched, these rooms she has passed by, things which she has seen. How many times mother would have looked at the sea, at the land, at the sky which we look, at these stars. And all these now carry that imprint. And every time we look at them with this feeling that, look, she has looked upon these, she has touched this soil. And mother says that, in fact, in that book, The Supreme, she says that wherever I have gone, the soil that I have touched with my feet, I have released the supramental vibrations into the atoms of that earth, which continue to do their work of transformation. That is why in Bhakti traditions it is said, Krishna is sacred, and of course, but even the dust of bridge is sacred. That is the feeling, that one goes and picks up the dust and puts on the forehead and says, I have received the touch of Krishna. How? The logicians and the scientists will say, well, because this dust has been touched by Krishna's feet. Scientifically speaking, the vibrations are captured by every atom of that dust. And when we touch it with the right attitude, with the right receptivity, this touch can once again awaken in us a long lost recognition like a memory. So, look at this simple and marvelous line. A moment which all murmurs shall recall. Savitri, one moment of nearness I want with you. An embrace of love. A moment of such nearness that my heartbeats are one with your heartbeats. But I don't want it to be just an ordinary moment. When my very soul looks out at you and meets your soul. And that moment should be such that all the murmurs, the winds, the river, and even the birds, they will remember it forever. And when they cry, something of that will flow into their voice. How marvelous these lines are. And how much we can apply them to this place, which we take so casually and many times forget it. That if such is the glory of the Divine Mother incarnate as Savitri, how much more when the Mother has come to us as Aditi. And Savitri blesses the Bhakta. She accepts. It's amazing. Sometimes one wonders, is it a symbol or real? Why? Because the human mind says, oh, Divine Mother, she is an incarnation of Divine Mother. How can she indulge into human love? Divine is free, He is infinite. He is capable of anything for transforming humanity wherever. Mother herself, she married and she said that I wanted to change him. That is why she got married. And she can come in any form. Wherever the hearts are open, there she can come. And at another level, it is also the marriage of the Lord and the spouse, his spouse. And what does it mean? It means the Prakriti, comes back to the Lord. And this coming back to the Lord means once again all nature is realigned. I think in computer there is a command like that, I don't know, restart or reboot, and then everything gets aligned again. So once when the Divine Mother, who is Para Prakriti, assumes the garb of Prakriti and meets the Divine who has become human, Satyavan is the Lord who has become human, and they meet and come together in one moment, the whole nature, human nature, animal nature, gets realigned by the very fact that nature is meeting the Lord in an earthly form. So it's a moment of great significance. It's the centenary year and we see it. We don't even realize what it means though. It's a realignment. So Savitri comes allured to her lashes by his passionate words. Her fathomless soul looked out at him from her eyes. Her soul is one with the eternity and infinity. She looks out from that. Passing her lips in liquid sounds, it spoke. This word alone she uttered and said all. Again we see the character of Savitri repeatedly Sri Aurobindo brings out. Men like to speak big words. So Satyavan is a typical, his Lord has become human and taken the masculine form. So men will speak, write long beautiful letters, but the feminine doesn't do all that. Her expression is very different. One or two sentences and it's over. When she met Sri Aurobindo, her husband sat with him and entered into big discussions on philosophy, talked about whether this world is born out of desire or bliss, and many other things. What did the mother do? Sri Aurobindo said she gave herself completely down to the physical cells without uttering a single word. And all that she does is, she writes in a diary, he whom we saw yesterday is here upon earth. This is how the feminine responds. She can give herself so completely. So look, Savitri, how clear she is in her heart and in her speech. She doesn't talk now big words. She has not even said who she is. All that she says is, O Satyavan, I have heard thee and I know. What does she know? I know that thou and only thou art he. That's it. Doesn't even qualify it. Oh Satyavan, I am so impressed. How beautiful. You are looking very good. You are so smart. Nothing. Same thing she will do when the queen will tell her that look, Savitri, go back and change. She will do the same thing. Once my heart has chosen, it chooses not again. It has willed and it will follow. Same thing she will do when death will tell her. Lot of reasoning and logic. Then logic is one of the weapons of the Asura many times. One has to be very careful of it. And Savitri says, O death, thou reasonest and I reason not. I see, I know, I act, I will. That's it. 2 lines. That you reason, I don't reason. But that doesn't mean I don't know. I see, I know, I act, I will. So Savitri in those 2 lines summarizes the whole thing. I know that thou and only thou art he. So we will pause here. We still have 2-3 minutes, but we'll continue the next movement after a 15 minutes break.